The mess hall was crowded and noisy, but she felt every pair of eyes on her. Teen recruits had silently surrounded her table, their grins cruel, their postures predatory. She didn't flinch, though her pulse hammered in her ears. Every instinct screamed danger, not just because of their numbers, but because she knew exactly what they thought, that she was small, quiet, and utterly unprepared for this. They didn't know her. They had no idea that the calm masks she wore hid years of training, danger, and discipline. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're rewatching from. I love knowing who is listening. Her name was Lieutenant Mara Quinn, a Navy SEAL recently transferred for a joint training program. She had hoped to move quietly, to blend in, to let her work speak for itself. But humans, especially young soldiers brimming with ego, rarely noticed quiet competence until it startled them. She had been here less than a day when the 18 surrounded her, blocking exits, leaning in just enough to make her feel cornered. "Thought you'd sit alone, huh?" One sneered, elbows brushing against her shoulders as if they owned the room. "Think you can eat without a little guidance?" Mara kept her gaze steady. Her hands lay flat on the table, almost inviting them to underestimate her further. Her chest tightened, not from fear, but from the moral question she faced. Strike first, and assert dominance. Or maintain control, and show them that courage didn't need aggression. The recruits laughed at her hesitation, thinking they had won before the game even started. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered slightly, casting small shadows that danced across the mess hall. The scent of fried food mixed with nervous sweat. Every detail sharpened in Mara's awareness. Every footstep. Every shallow breath. Every faint whisper from the recruit's lips. She could feel the energy change. They were testing her, trying to provoke a reaction to see if the quiet newcomer would crumble. And she realized something vital. She would teach them a lesson without losing herself in anger. 2 minutes. That's all it took. First, she moved her hands subtly, tipping the tray slightly to one side, not spilling her food, just enough to unbalance a recruit leaning too close. He stumbled forward. She exhaled slowly. The shift was almost imperceptible, but it sent ripples through the 18 like the first gust of wind before a storm. Then, with the faintest motion, she slid her chair back, creating space. The largest recruit lunged, assuming she would panic, but she was already moving, controlled, deliberate. Her elbow grazed his chest, not to injure, but to redirect. His own momentum carried him slightly off balance, and suddenly the others were reacting, tripping over feet, bumping into one another. Murmurs rose in the background, some whispers of disbelief, others of awe. Soldiers paused mid-step, their eyes widening as the realization began to dawn. Mara's calm was not frailty, it was experience, precision, discipline. A small smile crept onto her face. This wasn't humiliation, this was instruction. She could have struck them all down, she could have let them fear her. But the true lesson was in restraint, in showing strength without cruelty. By now, the recruits were stumbling over themselves, disoriented by her subtle control. She moved like water, fluid and unhurried, guiding their energy without ever raising her voice. Dust swirled from a nearby vent, sunlight streaming in at an angle that caught the faint glint of her dog tags, a symbol, almost invisible, that would soon make them understand. Finally, she took a single step forward, voice calm but firm. "You think you cornered me? You didn't." Her words were soft, but each one struck like a carefully aimed projectile. "You cornered yourselves." The mess hall went quiet. One recruit muttered, "Wait, she's." The words didn't need finishing. Mara's presence alone, the unwavering calm, the subtle control of the room, sheer competence revealed what they had not yet admitted. She was Navy SEAL. The silence was almost audible, thick with shock and the sting of their own arrogance. Then came the murmur of applause. A few recruits who had not been part of the group clapped, slowly at first, then with growing confidence. The 18 stared, unable to speak, faces flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and respect. Mara exhaled, a quiet release of tension she hadn't realized she'd been holding. She could have let the moment turn into spectacle. She could have imposed authority with loud words and harsh discipline. But instead, she chose empathy, showing them the balance between strength and restraint. The lesson was clearer than any lecture. Power without control was worthless. Courage without compassion was hollow. Mara picked up her tray, sat down, and took a slow sip of water. The 18 recruits still stood, unsure whether to apologize or merely retreat. One finally stepped forward, voice trembling. "Lieutenant, we're sorry." She nodded. "Learn from this. And remember, strength isn't about how many people you can push down. It's about how you lift yourself and others." By the time the instructors arrived, the atmosphere had shifted. Whispers of her skills spread like wildfire. Soldiers who had underestimated her now approached with caution and respect. The lesson Mara had imparted didn't just end with the 18 recruits. It rippled across the entire base. Because courage doesn't announce itself in shouts. It manifests in calm precision, in quiet confidence, in the choices you make when no one is watching, or when everyone is. And as Mara resumed her meal, the sunlight catching the edges of her uniform, the mess hall felt different, lighter yet sharper. Every eye now knew the truth. Underestimate a Navy SEAL at your own peril, because kindness doesn't vanish, it waits, and it finds its way back. And sometimes, the quietest cadet teaches the loudest lesson. If you enjoyed this story, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Whispered Words for more cinematic, emotional military stories that stay with you long after the video ends.